Okay, I think we can get started. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining today's didactic training session. A quick reminder that today's presentation is being recorded and it will be posted to the Transcend website for future viewing. After the presentation, we'll have time for a quick question and answer session. You can either ask the questions directly or add the questions to the chat. And then at the end of today's presentation, we'll share a link to a short survey, and we appreciate your feedback as it helps us shape future sessions. And with that, let's get started. Again, welcome to today's Transcend Professional Development Core didactic training titled Identifying Legitimate Research Journals and Key Considerations Before Submission. We're fortunate to have Sara Westall and Sandi Bates leading today's presentation. Sara Westall is an experienced clinical campus librarian with expertise in information literacy, evidence-based practice, and academic support in the health sciences. She has extensive experience developing instructional materials, collaborating with faculty, and supporting research initiatives. In addition, she is adept at managing library resources, promoting information access, and engaging in data management projects. Her professional interests include advancing research and strengthening scholarly communication within healthcare. Sandi L. Bates is a clinical librarian specializing in working with health sciences professionals. Her work has centered on expert database searching, publishing, data management, collaborating with authors throughout an article's life cycle, and outreach into rural health areas to provide education to healthcare professionals. One major area of professional and personal interest is being an ally to many diverse groups. Please welcome Sara Westall and Sandi Bates.
Well, thank you. I'm going to get going. I'm going to share my screen and got to move people around a little bit here. There we go. So as noted, Sara and I are clinical campus librarians. So predominantly we work with third and fourth year medical students and residencies and clinical faculty as they work through their research process. So today we want to help you recognize common characteristics and being able to identify what predatory journals look like, and then how to evaluate journals. We're also going to talk a little bit about how you select a journal, appropriate journal for your research area. Neither one of us have any conflicts of interest that we need to disclose. So, how do you select a journal for your particular area? So, there are some tools. There's one called Jane, Journal Author Name Estimator. And then Springer Nature also has a journal finder. Some other things you can do, we're going to walk through those too. You can also identify a top list of journals in your field. I have some AI examples of prompts that work really well for this. Although I'm going to say Copilot's not been my friend the last 5 days, so I kind of have a little workaround on that one. And then another awesome thing you can do is you can mine reference lists from the articles that you're reading that are similar to your research. Another thing you can ask AI to do for you. And those are probably three of the top ways that you can work on identifying a journal that is particularly likely to publish your article. So how they work is you enter keywords, an article title, or your abstract into a box. The tools then identify potential journals. They both will tell you impact factor. The nice thing about Springer Nature is we do have transformative agreements with them, and Sara's going to talk about those later. Then those will help you fund our article processing charge. So that's one nice thing about that. There's another way you can access that information too. The one caveat about Jane that I like to point out is it does identify some questionable options. And we are going to show you one of the major one that we find a problem with that we identify as predatory or not so much on the up and up. So I'm just gonna see if it's gonna cooperate and actually open it up. It did. So this is what Jane looks like. It is a bioscience one. So if you are in the humanities or maybe something a little further out than the health sciences, it's not as good at being able to identify what you want. But I'm just going to put in a topic I recently did a search on, febrile seizures and genetic um, predisposition, if I can get it spelled right, following vaccines. And actually, I'm going to move this back over here. Um, Sorry, I had it all typed out, but the screens are covering up part of what I'm trying to do. So, um, and you have to come down and you have to tell it to find journals for you. You can't just hit enter. So here are the journals that it thinks would be most likely to publish your article. You can see that the article influence is the impact factor. It also tells you whether it's open access or not. And it also tells you whether it's deposited in PubMed Central. So those are important factors, especially if you have federal funding for your research. A lot of the new plans require that for you. It also gives you an option to look at some articles if you want to see, like, how close is this to what I'm really looking for? So that's what Jane looks like. And I'm going to come back over here and grab Springer Nature. And I should have wisely copied this. And um, so, a couple things about Springer Nature. It will also help you look for funding, like I mentioned, for your journals that possibly we have an agreement with. So, I'm actually just going to do find the journals first. And one cool thing about it is you can also identify or compare then, did Jane give you the same journals that Springer Nature did? Then that's probably one clue as to which ones would be highly likely to also publish you. So Jane looks a little bit different, or excuse me, Springer Nature looks a little bit different. It does tell you if it's open access. It does tell you the impact factor. It does also tell you submission to first decision, which might be important if you are looking to be published a little more quickly. Um, and I'm not going to do the publishing cost thing because Sarah's going to go into that down the line of what our transformative agreements look like. But it walks you down. There's quite a few here. So they're pretty simple text matching to figure out which ones are most likely to be in your topic area. So that's how those two tools work to help you pick a journal. So now using artificial intelligence, I use Copilot. I've not tried ChatGPT. I haven't sold my soul to that particular um, type of AI, mainly because our Copilot license that the library has allows us to not be having to worry about what kind of information we're putting in. It's not feeding their back end. So just remember, never enter human subject data or information leading to being able to identify any of your subjects. This is mostly about case reports. We mentioned this to students. And another thing you need to do is decide how you want the information returned to you. Like, are you wanting summaries? Are you wanting lists of things? How is it that it's going to look? Because the better the prompt, the better the return on the information you get, right? So, my prompt idea, I think in tables. I organize my whole life in tables. I live in a table format. So I asked Copilot to identify journals with an impact factor of at least two publishing articles on febrile seizures following vaccinations and genetic predisposition. I told it to create a table to include the journal title, impact factor, types of articles accepted, because that's important. If you're writing a review and the journal doesn't accept a review, you certainly want to know that ahead of time. A link to the instructions to authors, so I don't have to go find that. And then again, the number of days to acceptance and publication, if that information could possibly be available. Not all of them actually do that. So this is what it returned to me, this nice table, journal title, impact factor, the types of articles, and it identified where it actually found them. So I knew that, a link out to the instructions to authors, the days to acceptance. Many of them kind of didn't have that, but interestingly enough, in the days to publication, it says 70 days. Acceptance to publication is about 10 weeks and 42 days to being published on the web as an EPUB prior to actually any print type of article being produced. So I like tables. This is visually pleasing to me, but I know it doesn't, not everybody thinks that way. So then, so the one couple of things I like about this is in the text, then it also told me why it picked these journals. So it says that the Seizure European Journal of Epilepsy has published a vaccine-linked seizure genetics case report on the SCN1A variant and vaccine management. Again, this particular variant seemed very tied to what was going on in this area of research. So it gave me that explanation of why it picked those. And then it told me all about, it couldn't really figure out days to acceptance. I didn't probably ask the best question there. So it told me that it tried to convert some things, and acceptance publication speed is not stated on the public author pages. Some of them do, some of them don't. So then I thought, well, people also think in lists. We like bulleted lists. So I just changed the prompt to create a list for each title with bullet points to include those same things I asked for in the table. And it told me, well, you didn't quite ask that well enough. So it updated my Word document into a usable draft with a clear heading and a journal by journal bullet format. It added and changed, it replaced my prompt text with document title, and then a short note about impact factor, your source, and timeline availability. And then it went on to ask me, oh, and by the way, do you want me to use journal citation reports or as the impact factor, or are you okay with SkyMago? So I told it I was okay with whichever one it wanted to do. And then it produced this nice list of things for me. It told me that there was the target journals with an impact factor greater than or equal to 2, and told me again that, the dates and timelines aren't always available. But I do like that it told me all the things I really wanted to know in this format. So it worked out either way, but the strong prompt is what's going to get you what you want. If you're going to use AI to ask it to mine reference lists, you could also tell it, here are the citations for the articles. Please look through all the reference lists and identify the 5 top journals that were published out of these 100 citations or whatever you want. And then it'll also generate a list of possible journals for you that are interested in publishing on your research area. So I'm going to stop sharing, and Sara is going to take over, and she's going to talk to you about deceptive publishing and a few other things.
I was muted there, sorry. So before I started with deceptive publishing, I just want to note that Sandi and I assist a lot with finding legitimate journals to publish in. And so we do what's called a journal matrix, and we will use the tools like Jane, like the Springer tool that you saw, to collect those. What we ask from you is typically an abstract or a clinical question enough information for us to go in depth to assist in finding you journals. And then we'll create a journal matrix for you with, the journal information, the acceptance to publishing, impact factor, author instructions, etc. So definitely reach out to us if you have any questions on that. But I'm going to go ahead and we're going to talk about deceptive publishing. Get to my slide here. There we go. So deceptive publishing has a couple of different terms. You'll hear predatory publishing, you'll hear deceptive publishing, unethical publishing. I am going to use unethical publishing because that is my best term to use in explaining this process. So the definition of deceptive publishing is predatory journals and publishers are entities that prioritize self-interest at the expense of scholarship and are characterized by false or misleading information, deviation from best editorial and publication practices, a lack of transparency, and or the use of aggressive and indiscriminate solicitation practices. So in other words, unethical journals take advantage of, in particular, the open access model by charging authors to publish while skipping your typical quality checks that your legitimate journals will provide. So you can see things like they exploit open access publishing for profit. They may appear legitimate, so their use of their website or branding may look real. They put profit over scholarly integrity, and they charge authors high publication fees. So you might pay an APC, an article processing charge or author processing charge, but in this case, you're not going to receive a rigorous peer review. There's not going to be a transparent editorial process or even credible indexing. So your whole entire research record could be harmed by all of this. And we're going to get into more detail about identifying these types of journals a little bit later. Here are some statistics on ethical journals. They have grown very rapidly between 2000 and 2025. As you can see, in 2010, there were a little over 1,800 journals, and now we are looking at a little over 20,000 in 2025. So that is a lot of journals that have unethical practices. The other thing I want to point out is that there are a couple of different harms, and the first harm is to academia and your scientific records. So again, predatory journals are going to present themselves as legitimate, but they're going to skip those peer review and those editorial safeguards that typical legitimate journals have. So the impact to academia is when unvetted articles are published and then they're later cited, they can contaminate the evidence base and then make it even harder for us researchers to distinguish credible findings from misinformation. Now, there are also quite a few harms to individual researchers, and these are just a few here. So your work may not be indexed. That can reduce your visibility and impact. Deceptive journal names can mimic legitimate titles, becoming misleading to people. And a big one here is that you might be unable to withdraw your submission to an unethical journal. And I'll also talk about practices on that in a little bit too. So, and you might even be listed on an editorial board without your consent, and that can be pretty damaging to your recommendation or to your reputation. So a couple of other things is there's a huge long-term risk to this too. So if the journal ends up disappearing, there's no archiving, your work can vanish, and that creates a gap in your CV too. So here is an interesting court case, and I will share out this link. So back in 2019, a federal judge ordered a publisher conference organizer with the last name of Gadella and his affiliated companies to pay over $50.1 million because they had deceptive business practices. So they had things wrong with the nature and the quality of their conferences and publications, so they were not legitimate. Their publication fees were not clearly disclosed, they were hidden. And so why this matters is, again, you need to really vet your outlets carefully. And this not only goes for journals, but this goes for conferences as well. And there are some resources at the end of our presentation that go into conferences that are also deceptive or predatory too. So you just want to make sure that you are looking at everything before you sign up for something, basically. So what makes a journal unethical? I included a really great article here, and I'll get that link sent out to you as well. These are tips to identify unethical journals. And the first thing that I want to talk about is that I have a disclaimer to this. And so why some untrustworthy journals are willfully deceptive, others might be simply of lower quality. There also may be legitimate journals that lack the gloss of more established and well-known journals. And it's also important to be aware of the resource disparities operating within the journal industry. And there also may be significant infrastructural disadvantages at which less money journals, particularly those in the global south, as I noted here, operate. So it doesn't necessarily mean that less than stellar English is an indicator that something is a journal is deceptive or unethical. And journals can still lack an ISSN, indexing, impact factor, and they still may be reputable and legitimate. So we need to know that there's going to be more than one red flag when looking at identifying legitimate journals. So our first tip is, I know that you all get many emails from different publishers, and you probably want to know, is this a legitimate email? Is this a legitimate journal? And so a lot of times what unethical publishers will do is have aggressive email tactics. So they'll solicit papers and they will give you a set cost. So they're really looking at making a profit instead of promoting your academic research. So things to look out for here is you want to look out for unprofessional language, flattery and bogus personalization, and then promises of a super fast peer review and a fast publication. So I have a couple of examples, and I'm only going to run through one just to make sure that we have enough time. But if you'd like to see, our slides or look at these emails more in particular, let me know. So the first two emails that I received are from faculty who emailed me asking, is this publisher legitimate? I constantly am getting emails from them. Can you help me out? So I'm going to actually go to the second one here. And you can see it is quite short. I'll just give you a second to read that. And then I'll show you what I looked at and what my response was. So this is what I found after doing quite a bit of digging, which, side note, we also as librarians love to do this type of research. And if you ever get an email that you're wondering about, send it to us. We will do our due diligence and find out for you, or do our best to find out for you. So things that I found out with this particular journal, I couldn't find any information about their pricing. That is not necessarily uncommon, but usually there is a way with the publisher to get a hold of that pricing. The address of the journal was an apartment building. Not also necessarily a red flag depending on, but it can be. So we also have found a few instances where we have found people's home addresses on Google Maps, and they were saying that they were a publisher. So It seemed like this journal wanted to publish many articles at one time, and they were really looking to get all of those articles. But they did have some articles with authors that definitely had some quality research in it. Each article was registered with a DOI, which is important. So other things that I found, some aspects of that journal diverge from how we traditionally define high quality. I couldn't find anybody on the editorial board. And then also the PDFs of journal articles, that included a closing page, which I kind of thought was really interesting, which advertised their mini journals for this Herald company. And it's not necessarily unusual for a publisher to run mini journals, but I have never seen a journal put a closing page listing all of their journals in an article PDF. And then we found some interesting information through the Better Business Bureau too. So again, not all terrible, but just things to take note of if you were wanting to publish with this particular journal. So a couple of more tips for you. There's a lot here. There's a lot here to unpack. So when looking at journals, does the journal's publisher's website seem unprofessional? So things, do they lack sufficient contact information or a verifiable address, a verifiable place of business, and they may not be affiliated with reputable publishing organizations. Is the editorial board reputable? So again, some red flags. Do they list their members of the editorial board with their contact information? Do the members appear to be qualified? And we in the past have actually emailed editors and asked them their experience with that particular journal just to get a little bit more insight. So never be afraid to email somebody on the editorial board and ask them about their experience with the journal if you have the contact information. So is the journal searchable in major databases? There are a couple of things here with that. There might be, say that they're indexing, but they might lack a DOI. They're not searchable in, PubMed, Embase, and all, just a couple of databases that I'm thinking about. And then there's also author guidelines. So typically, when you are working with a journal, they have very specific author guidelines for you as you're submitting your manuscript. And so if they are missing, or if there's no clear guidelines on copyright, plagiarism screening, their policies, this can be another red flag. And then lastly, are the articles published in previous issues high quality? Other things to note, again, I want to be very specific that one red flag alone isn't proof, but several together are a strong signal. So here again, too fast to be real. So that means that the experts did not have time to evaluate their methods, their statistics. The template review sounds positive, but it doesn't engage with your citations. And also, there are legitimate author APCs, author publishing charges, article publishing charges, but that payment should not drive you getting accepted or rejected. Also, a couple of other things, your peer review might lack rigor. So if the feedback is generic or you can tell it's copy and paste, those are some signs. There's an unrealistic timeline. So promises like, we'll accept this paper in 48 hours. That's definitely a warning sign. And also little to no copy editing. So maybe they have poor editing and sloppy formatting. The other thing I really want to point out here is this rights grab. So authors will give up copyright at submission, and this can limit future publishing options, which also can limit you withdrawing your work from an unethical journal and getting it into a legitimate journal. So we want to talk a little bit about Curious, and I'm also going to have Sandi unmute here because we have had some interesting happenings with this journal in particular. And this is kind of why we mentioned at the beginning when we were using Jane about a particular journal that we were going to show you. So I'm going to let Sandi take Curious away.
Sure. So it was actually started by Stanford, University of Munich, and then University of Central Florida jumped on right away. They have a big medical school. It was originally intended as open access, easy place for students to be able to submit an article when the step one exam for medical students went to pass fail, and they were looking for a way to distinguish themselves on their residency applications, and that was to have some research done. So it's now been bought out by Springer Nature. So no thing that could possibly make money is ever left alone. But this is exactly what their thing reads is they have no article processing charge, but only 20% of their articles are accepted for free. So if you're in the unlucky 80%, you must purchase their preferred editing. So you're only allowed a handful, is what they say. So I don't know if that's 5 or 3 or whatever, of maybe formatting errors, language isn't exactly what it wants. And that can be up to $1,400. That's their maximum that they'll charge you. That's before you even are accepted for publication, before you go to peer review. So they only also require 2 editors. So I don't know if anybody's familiar with the Faculty of 1000. It's kind of a crowdsourced commentary on research. It's not considered peer review. They don't publish the articles. They just go through your article and read it. It sort of seems like Curious has tried to jump on that train a little bit. They also claim that all of their articles are indexed into PubMed Central. So this is where we're going to get in the weeds a little bit. Technically, it's true that their articles are deposited in PubMed Central. Anybody can deposit something in PubMed Central. What gets indexed is Medline. Medline is a subset of PubMed, which are the peer-reviewed articles. Curious is not one of them. So if you're wondering if something is actually indexed into Medline and a little raises their legitimacy a little bit, there is a link in here, and we're certainly willing to share out our slides. That's the NLM catalog of publications, so you can tell whether or not the journal is legitimately indexed in Medline. So also, one of our colleagues was a co-author on an article, and it was accepted into Curious. She wasn't really very happy about that, but it happened. And following the publication, she got an email offering to boost her visibility by working the algorithms for a price. So they're willing to optimize language, search engines, whatever, to make you show up at the top of the list in Google Scholar or Google or any of those types of search engines that are outside of the databases that are a little bit more reliable in the content. So we have nixed Curious, even though it used to be free. So a lot of people did pick it because they were just really wanting to get something. Also, it's a really short turnaround time. They offer 2 weeks from acceptance to publication, which is kind of a little bit insane in how things are working, but only if you're the lucky 20%. If you're the 80%, you're not so lucky. You're going to have to fork out some money, and you're still not guaranteed whether or not you're going to get published. So we prefer not Curious. It frequently shows up on Jane as one of the top 3 or 4 options for publishing. So just wanted to be, It's got some legitimacy from where it started before. I don't know if Springer Nature will add to the legitimacy. To me, they've added more to the confusion about what you actually have to pay.
Mhm.
So I'm going to throw it back to Sara.
And speaking to curious too, I've had several medical students and medical residents contact me and say, I thought Curious was free, so that's why I published in it. And now they're charging me $600 to edit my paper. What do I do? And I immediately tell them, do not pay it. Let's look at other journal options together. So here are some other strategies as well. Normally, the Directory of Open Access Journals has quite a few of the legitimate open access journals in it. Again, not everything is going to be found in there, but that's a good place for you to start. I don't think we have Beal's List. I don't know if we did at one time, but Beal's List is another great place. Looking at their journal metrics, we subscribe to, the acronym is JCR. I'm going to journal citation. It's JCR. And you can see your journal metrics in there. Also looking at Cymago, and then COPE, which is the Committee on Publication Ethics. So all of these are some good strategies and also helping identify legitimate journals. So I want to talk a little bit about article retraction, because you may find yourself submitting to a problematic journal or an unethical journal, and it is really difficult to get your article withdrawn, because then they just won't respond to you, or they'll say, hey, for $1,000, I'll withdraw it, right? So here are some tips on how to retract an article if you kind of find yourself in that situation. So each co-author has to individually contact the publisher. You'll want to make sure that you are confirming your manuscript status with that publisher. So was it submitted and hasn't been accepted yet? Was it accepted? Was it posted? So kind of the different scenarios. And then with your co-authors, agree on a single plan and timeline. So here, all of you are going to contact the editor-in-chief, the editorial board, and if you know who the peer reviewers are, which frequently we don't, you'll want to make sure that you're contacting these individuals by email, by phone, and that you're sending certified mail. So other things to look at is your publishing agreement. So if you signed that publisher agreement already, insist that the editor return all the rights to you as an author. And please do not sign any new agreements. And also do not pay any withdrawal fees. Now, if it ends up, getting published anyway, you're going to want to document that publication date, the URL that goes with it, keep all of the evidence that you did not consent to it, and then seek institutional guidance before taking further action. So if you are able to resubmit, please submit to a reputable journal. And here I say, have your librarians help you, because we can help you do that. Again, you can do so if you did not sign an agreement for fitting copyright, you did not pay the publisher, you did not sign any sort of exclusivity agreement, and the publisher agreed to return your copyright to you, and they also removed your paper from their website. So here are some really good resources on article retraction, and they even have letter templates for you if needed, and we'll get these sent out to you as well. So I am going to switch gears a little bit and talk about our transformative agreements. So we have two. We have what's called a read and publish agreement, which are contracts between academic institutions and publishers. And this shifts the traditional subscription-based model to one that supports open access publishing. Under these read and publish agreements, the institution pays a combined fee that covers both the cost of accessing the subscription and any sort of article processing charges. And then we have S2O agreements. And in this type of agreement, academic libraries, so us, we use our journal subscription funds to support the journal transition to open access. So a couple of things here. In order to access our any of our transformative agreements, you do need to have a UND email. So if you are one of our clinical faculty and do not have a UND email, you need what is called affiliate status. So you'll need to talk to the chair of the department here at UND that you're working with and work that out with them. The other thing I wanted to point out, and I don't have a link to it, but there is a UND open access publication grant for Chester Fritz Library that would cover open access to a journal that we at the library do not have a transformative agreement with. We have links to our current agreements and then also the SciFree tool, which I'll show you in a little bit how to search our transformative agreements. These are our current read and publish agreements. The ones that may interest you the most would probably be Springer, Company of Biologists, and the Royal Society of Chemistry, but there are other ones that we can, within these that we can seek out as well. So, but I think Springer Nature has been a big one for SMHS. And that's where I've noticed most of our transformative agreements coming from. So again, you can use that SciFree tool. You'll need to use your UND affiliation, and you can consult us if you need any help on that. So I'm going to try to pop into the SciFree tool and show you around it. So if you type in a subject, a keyword, you have the journal title or the ISSN, it can search that way. For right now, I'm just going to go very broad and type in cardiology. And here you can see the ones that we have transformative agreements with. If there's a check mark here, that means that the library is paying for it. You do not have to pay any costs. It also gives you a licensing option, and you can look at the different publishing models as well. I'm going to see if I can find one that's an S2O agreement. I'm not finding one, but here it'll tell you if it's like a hybrid agreement where, you may have to cover some of the cost and we cover some of the cost. So there's different types of who pays here. So again, if you have any questions about this tool or about transformative agreements in general, please reach out to us. We're happy to help you find those. And that was really it for our presentation today. We have these lovely references for you if you're interested in them. And we will turn it back to you, and I'll stop sharing here. We'll turn it back to you for questions.
Sarah, I have a quick question. Not so much a question, but something that I think is worth clarifying. The hybrid publishing model is essentially gives the author a choice of either using open access and paying the article publication charges, or usually publishing for free using the journal subscription policy. So that is, I'll take a journal that I'm familiar with, like the American Journal of Preventive Medicine. It's expensive to publish there, like it is anywhere. We're talking about $4,000. However, let's say you just don't happen to have $4,000 burning a hole in your pocket. And you can elect to publish on the hybrid model, which means that your publication is only available to journal subscribers. That usually costs maybe a couple of $100, sometimes nothing. So my advice to faculty, if they're looking, and this is more for faculty because they should know this, um, is if cost is an issue, and it can be a tremendous issue, so that there are journals like some of the Nature publications that charge $10,000 per article. If you're supporting graduate students who you want to get a career going, how many $10,000 articles can you pay for? So my advice to people often is find a hybrid journal that's got a decent impact factor and publish not open access. Anybody who wants it can get the article through interlibrary loan through you.
But there's still a cost associated with
There
that.
is still a cost, and
Yeah.
a little bit of my suggestion would be is the reason why we have these transformative agreements is so that we pay those open access costs. So my suggestion would be if you don't have the funding and are looking at the hybrid model, to see first if we have a transformative agreement, because that'll cover everything more than likely for you.
So
Well, some of the major journals, I can tell you that we really don't have it for.
we
There's
don't.
an agreement to publish in the Italian Journal of,
Sure.
Urology or something, which is not really a mainstream journal. The mainstream journals know they can get the money, and will do it. And in fact, not only do some of these journals now have these exorbitant article publication charges, some of the cancer journals that I'm familiar with charge you just to submit a paper. So
Mhm.
at Cancer Research, if you want to submit a paper, it's $35 just to submit it.
They're going to get their pound of flesh. The problem is with the open access things, the journals like when Curious was before it was owned by Springer Nature, and there was all these fees. The publishing model was going down. They weren't making the profits, and so they're really trying to regain their profit
Mhm.
status, and that's how they're doing it. Um, so we do advocate for open access. Part of being a federally funded research institution is that people should be able to access the things that we're researching and the articles that go along with them. So we do advocate for open access and the transformative agreements from some of the people I've worked with. There are some still high quality,
Mhm.
high impact factor journals that are in there. I had a student submit a couple months ago. The APC was $4,000. If he's accepted, UND will pay that. I see there's a question in the chat if you can retroactively get open access. I don't think so because you've already signed
No, not as long
an
as you signed.
agreement
I know we
with
ran
your
into that. I've
publisher.
ran into that issue with somebody, so I know that you cannot do that.
Yeah.
I
So
do want to bring up a little bit about interlibrary loan too, because yes, interlibrary loan is free to you, but the library, so our department still covers a cost to get that article for you. Depending on, what you're looking for, we might pay, $5, we might pay less. Maybe with some of our agreements, we can get it for free, but interlibrary loan is not entirely free. To you as a user, it is, but we do as a department pay fees.
I think the average cost for an ILL article is about $30 because I'm the default fill-in when Allison's on vacation. Um, so the um, cost is out there, and the rules for copyright on that are 5 articles from a journal title are what we're entitled to. So once we're over those 5 um, articles, we're out of copyright compliance. Then the cost goes up. We pay a fee per year to clear that copyright clearance account. So there is a cost associated with that. But this also provides us with an opportunity to talk with you all. We encourage you to talk with your societies, your publishing. It used to be that the societies publish all these journals. That model has changed, but to talk with them about what does access to research look like? What are we doing to encourage like a lower threshold for what is profit for Springer Nature or somebody that look like? What an impact factor really mean? I mean, especially now with all the self-citations, all of the things that are going on, what does that really look like and what does it mean? And does it do you really have to have this certain impact factor to influence whether you get your tenure status? Like all of those things that go round and round and round with that. So there's a whole nother discussion there we could spend a couple hours on, I'm sure. There's a great blog called The Scholarly Kitchen, and it's the Society for Science SSP. I'm not going to get it right. It's the Society for Publishers, and they do a great job of discussing all these things. They have a wide international group of chefs, they call them, who author all these blog postings, and they bring up many, many good points about the publishing ecosystem as it is now. I see MDI came up in the NDPI came up in the chat. That's a hard one.
There's a lot of debate.
Some of their journals are really legitimate and some of their journals really are not. That's one of the cases where we've talked about that slippery slope and how do you identify them or not identify them. And those are when you kind of have to start asking questions. And it goes back to the profit model. The publishers are wanting to make a lot of money, and so they're willing to cut some corners in order to raise their dollar. I think publishing is about a 40% profit model, if that was one of the latest statistics I read.
I put the Scholarly Kitchen blog in the chat in case you want to take a look.
And I put the Jane and the Springer Nature Journal Finder links in also. And again, we're happy to share our slides if we'd like them sent out with the recording link.
That was a great presentation. I really enjoyed it. I would add one more resource to that, and that's Retraction Watch.
Yep.
Yes.
And that is a very entertaining a website to go to. They have a sort of an honor roll, for lack of a better term, of scientists who are racking up enormous numbers of retractions. The current winner has maybe 200 retractions. Of course, most individuals never publish 200 papers in their lifetime, so to retract 200 of them is starting to look just a little bit sketchy. But any journal that is involved in, I mean, you could have a legitimate retraction for a legitimate reason. But there are some journals that wind up retracting 30 or 40 articles at a single moment. That's got to tell you something about the quality or lack of it in the journal. So any place that is a frequent flyer on Retraction Watch is a place to steer clear of.
Absolutely. There's a great podcast called Who's Conning to Dinner? It's from Scamfluencers, and it's about this person who wrote about, he's the reason we eat 100-calorie snack packs. He's the reason we have a small plate dinner based on marketing. He's not a food scientist. He had a $5 million NIH grant at Cornell, and that's where he got outed for all his false statistics because he bragged about one of his grad students being a quitter because they wouldn't keep cooking his data till they got something they could publish. And one of his other grad students was willing to do that. And so there's a group of statistician geeky people who heard about that, and they went back through all of his research, and he lost his grant. He lost all of his credibility, but we're still eating 100-calorie snack packs, aren't we? So that research is out there. It's a really interesting podcast. If you got half an hour and you're driving down the road and you want to listen to a podcast.
There was one more thing too I wanted to bring up about retractions. And we subscribe to this tool called LibKey Nomad, which is a browser extension. So on a broader scale, it will tell you whether or not you don't have to be proxied into our databases. So let's say you're going to pubmed.gov instead of proxying in. It'll tell you whether or not we at SMHS Library Resources have access to a particular article, book chapter, or not, and you can download it right away. You do still have to proxy in to get the actual article, but I think it saves you a lot of time knowing what we have and what we don't have. One of the things that LibKey Nomad does is it points out article retractions. So it points out the actual article retraction as you are, if the article itself's retracted as you're doing, a literature search, and it'll tell you why. But it also points out citations within that article if they've been retracted, and then you can go in and see why they've been retracted as well. And it also shows expressions of concern, and it'll take you directly to that expression of concern. So I could do a whole hour presentation on LibKey Nomad if you ever want, but I think it's a wonderful tool that we subscribe to.
RefWorks also will show you, not RefWorks, sorry.
Zotero.
Zotero, our citation manager that we teach, also will show you if an article's been retracted that you've downloaded out of citations. Well, thank you all for coming. We appreciate very much that you're willing to listen to us, and we're more than happy to help you. We're available on Teams, email. Both those work the best for us.
Well, thank you too, Sara and Sandi, for this very informative presentation. And thanks to all the participants for attending today. And if you could take a few minutes to complete the survey, that'd be great. Other than that, thanks again and have a great day. Bye-bye.